21st Charter Revision Commission meeting at 6:30. Open up the meeting. Roll call, please.
Laura Ray Anderson is absent. Kate Boulay. Here. Tom Cremona.
Here.
Marilyn Corsati. Here. Justin Elliman.
Here.
Gary Lucerno.
One last time. Here.
George Shaw.
Here.
Greg Stokes.
Here.
And Rich Strong.
Here.
8 members are present. One's absent.
Approval of minutes. Assuming everyone had a chance to review those, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 12th?
I was gonna say, when I spell my name, it's with a Y instead of an I. It's a minor thing, just for the record.
Okay, we can correct that.
Yeah. And outside that, I'm fine.
Me too. I have no N in my name. Not that it's gonna really matter anymore. Yeah, I do not have an N.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, noted corrections notwithstanding. Any other items need to be adjusted, changed? I think just a show of hands for this one.
Mhm.
Shows.
Yes.
I show of hands to accept the minutes. Any opposed? Okay. Item number 3, discussion of possible action regarding proposed charter revisions. First thing I wanted to touch on, first thing I want to say, and I just wanted to acknowledge officially the prior commission that looked at and provided changes to the town chart. I know a lot of work went into that, and I do want to recognize that our effort doesn't minimize the work that was done. I know we have 2 members from that former commission. A lot of work there, and I think we agreed last time that we do want to take those into account. We have the red line copies that reflect those. And obviously bringing in the public comment as well. One thing I did want to touch on is just talk about and agree on just the timing of our process here. And I just put together what I consider a simple chart, just to review kind of the dates and the plan. It is just a proposal by me. I'm open to discussions. I'm gonna need more. Good. We say just broke it down into chapters. This is the number of sections in each chapter, number of pages involved, just so we can see the volume side and then the topic. And on the right-hand side, I have dates just kind of to give us a ballpark of when we want to get these, when we want to actually discuss and review these. And I tried to just put it into chunks that made sense based on the amount of pages, sections, whatever you want to call it. This doesn't mean we couldn't go ahead of the timeline. If we need more, by all means. I just wanted to put something in place so that by mid-May, my goal would be to have a formal proposal to the town council. If we need the extra weeks that we have on the schedule, by all means, we can use it. If we need fewer, because again, a lot of the work has been done. Not to say that we don't have our own opinion on that and we can't go a different direction if we think appropriate. But again, just a rough timeline. With that said, I did want to just discuss a rough amount of time you want to spend in each of these meetings. And not that we have to put a clock on it, but what is the consensus in terms of, or Tom, how much time were the meetings previously?
2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah, and that, I think I heard you say this, right? Which is the idea is if we start tonight and we say we want to be out of here at no later than 8:30, and we blow through sections 1 and 2, we can keep going.
Right,
Absolutely, just stay until 8:30.
absolutely. My goal is simply to create a plan
Yeah.
that,
Because you know what I think is going to happen? I think we're going to blow through some of the sections, and then we are going to slow down for some of the other ones that are more material.
Yeah.
That might take a whole meeting,
agree.
maybe more.
And that's my intention.
Yeah.
Just a rough framework. And again, if we can go ahead and schedule, great.
Yeah.
If it does take longer, we do have a few extra weeks that I haven't accounted for on here.
Right.
That's fine too. We have the schedule already set for that.
Yeah, so it's just a suggestion. I'd be fine with 8:30. I'd be fine with 8 o'clock. I'd be fine with 9 o'clock, but.
Should we do something like when 8:30 hits, we start trying to wind down the conversation and be done by no later than 9?
I think that's fair. Or,
I mean, it will still be up to us. We can be like, hey,
and again, what I don't want is us to get so tired and stuck in this stuff. And
Yeah.
not having gone through it before as a participating member, but I don't want us to get so bogged into it that we just kind of lose focus and it just doesn't have the value it should have. Fair?
Yep.
Any other thoughts or suggestions on the proposed timeline? we have to vote on that, right? That's just kind of our, okay. With that said, we all received the public input items. And she'll obviously group those by chapters as well. So my suggestion is simply, we'll look at each chapter and then let's talk about the red line items that are in there first, and then we can look at the public comments and see what may or may not conflict or support or be value added from there. So with that said, let's just look at chapter 1. Any updates or thoughts on chapter 1 itself?
I have anything for chapter 1.
No red lines and no public comments for that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm looking at it the same way everybody is. I have my red line copy, right?
Yep.
So in my red line copy, under section 1 general, that's what we're looking at? Is that
No,
right?
section 1 incorporation, you're looking at
Chapter 1 itself.
the page on the left.
Sorry. Glad I asked.
Page 2.
Page 1. Got it. Thank you.
Any suggestions or concerns about chapter 1?
None.
I don't.
Okay. We will move to chapter 2. Obviously, chapter 2 has some red lines. It goes from page 3 to half of page 4, some red lines from the previous commission. I did find a typo in the word therefore on line 3. See that, Cheryl?
Should be an E at the end of
E
it.
at the end of it?
Yep.
Just section 1, any comments, any concerns around the red line? We'll start there.
Well, I might have some bias for this one, but I know a lot of people want to get rid of the constable position, which I get. I consider what if instead we add more to it, so it's a way for people to be involved in their community more instead of like little responsibilities, so people can still take part in their community without having to be like, I want to be on the board of ed or the town council. And I have some suggestions there, but I was less certain on just getting rid of the position entirely.
I'm just gonna parrot what we have. So I have a note, Wednesday, March 18th. That appears to be from John Santinella. That was part of the stuff we got ahead of time, right? And on the back page, page 2, he's advocating for elimination of constable positions. And, that's consistent with what was recommended last year, just to not let everyone know that. And it was this concept that, kind of to your point, the positions as they are now didn't seem to have much relevance in the town government anymore. So that, I thought that however many there are, which I think there's 2.
No, there's
Four, there's 8. Okay, they were not filled, not all the spots had been filled, it hadn't been filled for quite some time. So that was kind of the logic behind the recommendation, and there really wasn't anybody voicing let's hold back, maybe we can do something. So I think your thoughts this year are new thoughts that were not brought to the table last year. And so I think that's kind of where we should probably start. Is it appropriate to say, as they're described now, there's not much relevance, so we should eliminate them? Or should we give consideration to, if we expand the role somehow, would that justify them and kind of go from there? I think that's where we are on the position.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, now I'm personally, I don't know enough to have an educated opinion. I went with the flow on this last time around saying, well, geez, if nobody's arguing to keep them, I'm not gonna be the one to argue to keep them. And that's kind of how it played out, as simple as that. And so I don't have any strong sentiments one way or the other. I'm open to hearing what could they do that would enhance their relevance. I'm open to hearing that.
I was not aware that they were having trouble placing constables.
Yeah,
Maybe emphasis should be put on somehow letting the public know that
maybe,
we're interested in finding people to be constables.
yeah. The questions that were asked were,
I don't think
It's been
we
a-
eliminate it.
it's been a while since they had been filled. And what are we missing because they hadn't been filled?
Yeah.
That's kind of how the conversation went. And so, geez, if we haven't had them, maybe we don't need them.
I don't recall.
Well, they're
them.
elected. We have eight that are elected. Seven.
Non-voting.
Yeah,
I'm not, but I am the staff person on this suggestion.
That's the blue.
Yes.
Okay.
So they are elected positions. In some towns, quite a few towns have eliminated them. The towns where they're elected, they generally haven't had responsibilities. The town that are appointed, because they're appointed, they send them to training. They may do some small traffic control or something like that. They're given responsibilities. We have not traditionally in Enfield used our constables for anything like that. We have had a full slate since I've been here. Occasionally we have a vacancy, but we have had a full slate. But I will say this would be, if you were thinking of adding responsibilities to the constable, we would have to go for a town attorney opinion, because you only have responsibilities in elected positions that are given you by state statute. So you can't arbitrarily say, oh, let's give the constables this responsibility, because it has to be authorized through state statute already.
And it's not.
I don't know what,
Okay.
We would have to legally.
yeah, we would have to say what responsibilities we would like to add and then have it legally
I
reviewed.
think that a lot, I mean, we've had
Or leave it as the way it is.
yeah, we've had constables, I mean, years and years ago. I mean, we're talking before all of us were around here. I mean, there were some duties and stuff. I think the only main reason that they've been in there now is because for both political parties, they use it as a feeder to future elections. So they get somebody, you get 4 people nominated and they're on the election and stuff. Get some used to that. It's not a real purpose to keep it. I would be in favor of getting rid of it, so.
Okay.
So I have a question. I'm gonna be going a lot being here on my first committee, but I know it's elected, but is it a paid position?
No,
Okay.
nothing on town is paid. I think any of the elected positions are.
No, the only thing it is would be the assessment appeals board. They're paid. Trust me, I know.
Thank you.
I did revale years on that, so.
That could be I know you were mentioning, they get sent to trainings and things, those cost money that the town would have to pay
Just an honorary thing, that's all it is.
to send them, get them what they needed to be doing for their duties. So, okay, thank you.
They used to serve warrants.
Well, you had, what's his name? Yeah, but Teddy also had he was a marshal for a while too, but he used, that was under his line. He'd have it advertised as a constable to serve, those kind of things, summons and stuff like that. So, but I don't know that it was actually an official thing for that. I think more of a marshal thing, but yeah, I do remember talking. Oh, I talked to him all the time about that. I think he gave me a summons one time, so. Nothing bad.
Matt,
It was for probate thing.
from the town side, do you see a use for the constable role from a town perspective? And again, I know it's an antiquated position.
Well, let me go back to something that Sheila talked about in terms of training, because the problem that we as municipality have is, as soon as we start using them in any of the different ways that it's possible, so using them for tax purposes, right? I mean, that's something that has been done in the past, where they'll go out and do things tax related for the towns. We would want to make sure that they are properly trained. Our insurance company would require that we properly train them So they don't create an issue under the color of town of Enfield, that then we get sued and they have to pay money out. And so the connection is that, you know, the different things that the state statute allows constables to do, if we start using them that way, we would have to make sure that they do have the proper training that allows us to provide the coverage through our insurance for any acts that they have. When I was here last, you know, this is an issue the town ran into with the animal and wildlife officers. You know, they carried sidearms, but we never trained them. But they went out on calls with the sidearm. And our insurance company said, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
You know, did they go through the 6-week training course that they have to go through? It's like, no, we're not, because we don't pay them. We're not going to send them to this because of the cost and then the insurance that had to be done afterwards. So I think there, you know, you would have to first, you know, define what they're going to be doing. I mean, I don't know necessarily with everything that we do now, if there is a place in those responsibilities the state carved out for them. You know, obviously, we're not using them for most things. I mean, since I've been here, I can't think of one time that we said, hey,
Not even ceremonial,
yeah.
not even parades.
So I guess that probably speaks more than anything I can say is that the town hasn't been using constables in any way that, you know, the state allows us to use them for some time, I'm guessing.
And some, for those town served demands, tax demands and
Yeah.
summons, we use marshals and
Yeah.
that the insurance and it all falls onto the
Right.
marshals and not to the town.
Um, do they have to be elected positions? If the town said we want constables, do they have to be elected?
In Connecticut, they're all elected.
They're all elected.
No, there's
You
not.
know, some towns are appointed, my town is
Really?
appointed.
So there you go. That would be unless your town's doing it wrong.
Right?
If-
Correct.
Could be two different
Could
ways
be.
for that to happen.
You never know.
My thoughts, again, I've never known much what the constables do. I haven't heard that they've done anything.
Like I said, I mean, like I said, as one official, we don't do a thing.
Right.
It's what we choose to do. Like I'm trying to do this stuff to do something as a constable. So that's why my suggestion were to be just have them automatically go to committees, you know, be put on committees as like an assignment as part of the job. But if under law, constables can only do certain things, that might not be feasible.
Well, and most commissions have to be appointed by the council anyways,
Yeah, that might just not be
right?
feasible.
Given what Matt said, I mean, if the town wanted to leverage constables, you know, perhaps they could just create the position versus having as elected. Does it help that the town elects constables? I don't know how many, right? What is the vote count for constables versus anything else?
No, they're usually in line with the others on their line, you
The
know,
line.
obviously, probably a little lower because people get down there and don't think about it, but primarily whatever the count is for each side or whatever they usually average out, so.
Sometimes the name recognition thing, like last time one of the constables was more well-known, he outperformed some of the councilmen too.
Well, Ted always was tough, you know, even when Republicans would win majority, Ted, would always be, and I think because, you know, people respected and knew him, of course, he was a figure in our town for many, many years.
Thoughts, opinions?
I'm good with eliminated, there's no purpose for it, so I just.
Next point, there's none. And I guess if there's something going on with them, I would have thought of it differently, but
No, if legally we can't really give any power to the position, then there's no really point keeping it.
so keep the constables eliminated.
That was it.
Should I have to put that
Yeah,
on
you
hold?
wanna,
Oh, we have to vote on
yeah.
each one.
We should at least get a consensus.
Okay. All those in favor of removing or keeping the red line crossed out of constables off the charter, show of hands, please. Any opposed?
Not sure which way.
Okay.
You can
You can
abstain,
abstain.
sorry.
And then any issues with the clarification with the and the 4 terms of 2 years added in that first section?
No.
What's the judge of probate now for elections? Is it every 2 years?
It's 4 years.
It's 4 years, right? What was the thought process of going to 2?
No, this was for the registrar of voters.
It's
This
just
was-
for
And it is that they are 2-year terms. It was just never
Okay.
specified in the charter, so.
So will the judge of probate still be 4 years, or are we going to 2 years on that?
The judge of probate is state, it's elected,
state
but
thing.
it's
Okay,
a state,
so-
yeah,
Whereas the registrar of voters, we have.
right.
Okay.
We could, it could be a 2-year term or a 4-year
Okay.
term.
So just more formally,
It just was never recognized in the charter.
Yeah.
Before.
a show of hands just to accept the red line changes from section 1 as shown. Opposed? Okay. Section 2, any suggestions, changes?
Has there ever been any talk of 4-year terms as opposed to 2-year terms? It seems like the council just gets going on something and then, it stops for elections. I'm just
It was
asking.
discussed briefly at the last charter revision,
I would say,
very briefly.
other towns our size, like, how long do their counselor tend to serve, if anyone? That might be something we actually have to look into. Because I'm not opposed to the idea of our counselors staying in power longer if it makes the job more efficient for them, if, they have.
4 years is a long time though. And
It is.
For anyone who's been on town council, and I haven't, but those that I've talked to, 2 years is sometimes long
I'd
enough.
say it'd be 50. But I mean, I was on the council, what, 7 years, Matt, something like that?
Yeah.
And the 2 years bothered me for one thing. Number one, I was on the Board of Ed in Detroit before I came here. This was 35 years ago. And it was 4-year terms, which really, it kind of took some of the politics out of it because you get in, you don't have to worry about running for anything for 3 years, and it kind of helps that. 2 years, usually you get your first year in, your budget in and stuff, and by the time you get past the state elections the next November, you're already running again. And I've always been in favor of 4-year terms only because of the fact it allows the elected officials to do the work and really that 2-year thing sometimes just brings a lot, it costs a lot, obviously to run the election, but it also, for my mind, it doesn't give them a chance to really lead and do the job. That's just me, so.
I kind of agree with what you said there. I feel like there's a lot of good points on that.
And I think some towns split it, so it's like half run.
Yeah.
1 year and half run 2 years later.
Right,
So it's
going to
not-
4-year terms brings up the question, do you want them to be staggered terms?
Right.
And also, municipal elections happen every 2 years, regardless of whether we
Right.
have a 4-year term for the
Right.
council. So then you have vacancy terms.
I like it.
Because if someone resigns or, passes away, now you've got a 2-year vacancy or a 3-year vacancy
They
to
fill
go
it
to
out
the
in the
ballot.
chart. Yeah.
Right,
There's a lot of logistics if you're gonna do, because like in Michigan, I go back there as a reference, I was on the board of ed and we had the rotate, which means every year there was election and someone was up for reelection, not everybody. So it kept continuity for people being on there and bringing new folks in. But every year you had to have an organizational meeting and elect your chairman and your vice chairman and stuff like that. I'm just of the nature that, the 2 years, I mean, you're ready to run again within after the first year, and it really is, there's pros and cons. I mean, I understand the 2 years being good in the fact that if you don't like who's in there, you can get them out in 2 years. But, to me, it's 4 years, it's hard to do a job in 2 years because, even in 4 years, you're gonna do probably a good 32 months before you start running. But right now, it's 12 months and you're already thinking about running. I know both parties. I mean, I'm sure that after the November of this year with the state election, come January, everybody's trying to figure out who's running, and then.
And to Shield's point though, staggering them, right? So you want the whole town council reelected every 4 years, right?
I would stagger the council,
Right.
Stagger Board of Ed.
so.
I like the idea of staggered 4 years. That way they can serve longer, but the town still has input every 2 years on,
Well, and there's continuity with the town council, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone's rotating off every year.
yeah,
And that's what we face currently, right? The whole town council can change every 2 years.
yeah,
Well, what you would do then for the next municipal elections, if you did all that, you would have some seats running for 4 years, some running for 2, and that's how you begin the staggering. So you'd have to do that.
And I would imagine to make it palatable, it'd have to be equal numbers of both parties.
And you'd have to decide how you were going to handle the district council.
Yeah, that's another thing there too.
I mean, one of my suggestion would just to be moving solely to districts and away from at large. And I think if we were to stagger, it could work better with a system like that than an at large system.
Just to bring something to your attention, though, when you have, if you were to say, I know your suggestion, Justin, was to have each counselor be its own district counselor. Depending on how you look at it, what could happen is because district councils is 1 against 1, right?
Yeah.
So minority representation doesn't kick in, which means right now you're gonna have a limit of how many of one party can be on the council. When you have all districts, there's no limit because it's just 1-on-1. So technically you could have all Rs, all Ds.
Yeah.
No, and I think there's a value to the at-large component, whether we change this or not. Having the at-large gives the whole town the ability to vote on individuals versus just those in their specific district.
My suggestion would be also, if we were to consider just districts, would be also have a mayor. And you could have the loser of the mayoral race, be minority I know it's not as much minority representation, but like say one party were to sweep it, if you lost a mayoral race, you would still gain a seat on the council, kind of like how it is at large at the moment. So like say we had the 8 district races, and one party swept all those and the mayoralship. The mayor position would still kind of run like how at large does, where the minority, even if you lose a seat, you still get on anyway. Instead of being mayor, you would just be a normal council person. That way you would still have some sort of representation for the minority party.
So Justin, you're talking about electing the mayor
A strong
rather than
mayor.
the council
Yes.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
With 3 people.
Then I think it would just be the second place would be, like, I think the thing should be in general, like, cause I think, obviously we're in a very 2-party system, but I don't know if it's in the law. How is it in the law right now?
So the law just restricts the number of a single party for us, because we have to have, yeah. So you can't, I think, I just looked at this before I came down here.
I guess a theoretical idea would be like, say, trying to think. Like, say you have the normal party, every party's running, 4 at large, but then like one person runs independently. And they manage to outperform like the party that loses, like, do they get seated?
So again, the state law is only talking about a majority of a party.
Yeah,
So you could have, 7 Democrats, and you could have, a Republican, an independent, and, a Green Party, right? I mean, so it doesn't say that the minority party has to have a certain number of seats, because you could have multiple minority parties.
it's just the majority can't have more than a certain
Right,
number.
6 is the maximum majority.
I don't know, I don't know, I like the idea of staggering. I didn't know if it would work better with districts, or if we would have to figure out how to restructure, the at-large seat to do something like that.
It may be that the stagger could only be the at-large.
Wouldn't that be trickier because of the minority party seats? Because if you were,
They're, right now to seat, they're treated as separate races. The 7 at-large are where the minority representation, which is really, like Matt said, it's really just regulating how many of the major party can, the maximum amount of the major party. And then the district ones are their own separate races as far as seating counselors. So as if we had 4 districts,
yeah,
which we do, and as in this last election, if every district was to go like, Republican or Democrat, all one party, then the 7, that's where minority representation kicks in. That's the 4-3.
Yeah, I think someone just said you can't have more than 6 from the same party. Did someone just say that?
No, you can have 8.
That's not.
That's not right. If someone, did I hear someone say that?
I don't think so.
It's not
That's
6.
not.
It's not 6. 6 is for the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the council,
Council can have
theoretically,
4 districts,
have-
4 at large.
you can have 8
8.
from the same party.
Which what we have right now, I believe.
So
7.
7 and 4.
7 and 4.
if you were to stagger it, could you,
No,
Eight.
it's 8 and 3. It's 8 and 3 right now.
so if you were to stagger, it, could it 1 year be, one election be at large, and then 2 years later at districts, and then at large, and then districts?
I have a question, which is, I don't know if we talk about that until we reach consensus on 4 years. Because in order to stagger, you'd have to go to 4 years, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, and I don't know if we've reached consensus on the 4 years yet.
yeah, I don't think I think we're trying to game all of like what ways
Yeah.
that could work.
Yeah, because I have opinions about staggering, but I also have opinions about whether it should be 4 years or 2 years. And I think we might want to focus on the 4 versus 2 first, and then talk about whether we stagger it. Does that make sense?
Follow that.
Okay. The concept of the 4 years versus 2 years, yeah, I'm in the camp of, I hear the comments about, man, it's hard to get anything done in 4 years, never mind 2 years. I hear that, right? And I can see it. But I do think strongly that this concept of, let's recognize what the town council is. It's good people trying to do good work and not getting paid a penny right now. And so I think we've all experienced sometime the council is not effective. And so the ability for the town to be able to say, I gotta make a change in 2 years is a valuable thing to me. And so I am still on the side of, I like the 2-year idea, because in this concept of town politics where you're getting good people who are just trying to do a good job, sometimes it just isn't working. And to have that be in place for 4 years scares me. So I am an advocate of the 2-year policy. And I just wanted to hopefully get a little bit more discussion going around that before we move to the 4.
Well, I'm going to echo part of what you said there. The benefit of the 2 years is if this town council isn't working, we residents can shake it up,
Right.
right? We've seen that over the past couple of elections, right? It's swayed both ways. And if they're doing well, they get elected another term, right? And I do see the value of doing a 4-year term because it does create a little more balance.
Yeah.
But I prefer to say if the people are doing a good job, reelect them. Right, and that's just my opinion on that. And I think we're gonna create a lot of, looking downstream, I think if we go to 4, we're gonna create a lot of work that I don't know that would be accepted.
And I think if I can speak, I was gonna kind of paraphrase that also, is if, they're doing a great job, like you said, they're doing it, to be a better town. If they're doing a great job in 2 years, they should be a shoo-in in the next election, and they can continue their great work. If it's not being effective, then we're not bound for 4 years to try to wait to make that change. So I think the 2 years is a better option, in my opinion.
I try to not make real generalized statements, but sometimes you have to. And like in this instance, when you look at the every other week town council meeting, how many of the issues are things that are being talked about that are going to have a long tail to them? There's some, but the hot stuff, in my opinion, tends to have a shorter time frame. And so the value of being able to stick with it for 4 years, I'm not sure how many issues there are like that. I think more of them tend to be shorter timeframes. And so you can get some things done in 2 years. And if all of a sudden the council starts leading in a direction that the town goes, wait a minute, that doesn't feel right. And the town can make a change. I don't know how much we lose in the longer term projects. Many of them are well beyond even 4 years. And from council to council to council, they seem to pick up on those topics and seem to follow them forward. I don't know if they lose momentum on the longer term projects. I haven't seen it. But, you know, that's my perspective. Like the budget drives so much of what the council does. And, you know, that's not 4 years. I read something in here about there should be a longer term budget, but talked about that later on.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, not paying attention all that much, not to this, but
Yeah.
to politics in general. You have 2-year terms and you have some of those longer term
Yeah.
issues. Has it been experienced where you have one party in charge, let's go with this? They get voted out, next party goes, we don't want that. And all this work you've done, maybe expense that the town has incurred.
Not the major items.
Not that, you know, I'm looking for.
First little things that are
Yeah.
politically nuancced.
Okay.
Do, but
All right.
the
The
bigger.
train station has lived through many councils. The waterfront reclamation.
When it started, it was all steam engines when they started.
I mean, you
I
know,
remember
yeah,
30 years ago, we were talking train station.
yeah. So it's like, you know, you wonder sometimes whether it'll ever, things like that would ever happen.
Right.
As opposed to, all right, now we're in the majority, no, we can stop this thing. You know, I'm gonna hesitate before I say it, but I can't think of one major initiative that flipped when the council flipped.
Good.
Because we've had 2 of those, right, in a row,
Yeah.
right? Democrat to Republican, Republican, to Democrat.
Right.
So that's, I guess you could argue 4 years, 4 months.
Mhm.
I can't think of one,
Okay.
you know, that,
Just think of the modernizations lost a lot of steam. You know, the modernizations.
See, the thing is with the town manager style of government, the 2-year terms work because the continuity of project stuff is led through town and the town manager and so I think that gives an okay for the 2-year terms. Obviously, you know, there's schools of thought on both sides of it. The question is it something that we want to raise up and try to change now? But with a town manager style, anything that may be lost, projects or whatever, won't, you know, is run by the town manager. So, and.
So that might have been why it lost steam because town manager changed as well.
Yeah. And that's what happens.
I think that.
A lot of times when the council changes back and forth, sometimes the town manager is the one that gets, I've been here and when, you know, town manager was let go a week after and I've been here, you know, I mean, other times, so. I mean, backward, like, I mean, I was there, we brought him in the first time, so.
Just to get a sense check, show of hands, of anyone in favor of changing it from 2 years to 4 years?
I'm fine either way, but I'll just leave it there.
If you're okay, we'll move on. We can certainly circle back later on when we kind of get back to that.
My only thing, I think we were gonna do 4 years, it would have to be staggered anyway, just 4 years
Oh,
straight, I'm not in favor of.
Does that also address the comment you shared about the 2 councilors per district plus 1 elected mayor, and it's all kind of combined with that?
I don't think it does, I don't know, I guess cause I was, the whole moving from at-large to districts, I don't know what the thought consensus was on that, if people want to consider that, instead of having at-large, just having more individual districts.
I like the at large because you have one district person and then you have at large. I don't think it makes a
I like
difference.
it large.
I like the at large.
I think-
Show of hands, keeping as is, districts and at large.
I just think my final thing was just to make the mayor elected position instead of a chosen position. And I think to do that, you would just replace one of the at-large districts with the mayor. I think the mayor should serve how they do now, like how, you know, or they're kind of like a counselor with everyone else, but give the town more of a say in that mayor.
What's the benefit?
I just think that the town would like to have a say, because right now you vote for a group of people and you might not like the whole group, you might not have voted for the whole group, and then, the mayoralship may go to someone. You don't like the idea of them leading the town. I would say it would give the people an idea of who's gonna be leading the team. Because right now, when you vote for them, you don't know who they're gonna choose, You don't know, oh, if I vote for Republicans, I would like that guy to be in charge. I really don't want it to be him. They win, you're like, oh, it's him. I don't like that idea.
I think for me, say the mayor, it's a ceremonial. Basically, that's the chairman of the council. And basically is majority party usually elects the chairman and the vice chairman. And I think to me, if we're not changing anything else, I don't see it necessary to change that. I know what you're saying. But that's just the way it's been done. And, mayor, it's not a strong mayor.
No.
We have a town manager. I think, the key is to run the meetings and stuff like that, so.
I do like the idea that the challenges I see. One, the mayor gets elected from a minority party and now is fighting the town council because the majority party is overriding whatever he or she would really want to guide the town council to do. And with that said, what if the majority party, if I'm in the majority party and I was elected as mayor, what if the rest of my party really didn't want me to be the one to be mayor? Right? I do think that there's a value for the majority party to have consensus on who they want representing them. I think that's the big value of the way it's structured now. I'm not opposed to the idea of elect the mayor of your town. I question if our town's prepared for that.
I could almost say you could almost have the mayor, it could be the position where it's both mayor and minority leader. So if you're, like how it is currently, if you win the at-large districts, if you win overall, then that person is mayor. But if you lose, they're minority leader instead. I know we're talking about maybe adding that in as well. So that way you wouldn't create a situation, like you said, where Republicans could win, but a Democrat is popular enough to become mayor. You could have it be where you get it based off of your party had the majority. So you're running for mayor, but your party doesn't get the majority, then you're minority leader.
I want to apologize again. I'm not quite sure I'm following. When you said, how does it work today? Right? Today, did you say that what happens today is you get 11 people elected, the majority party picks their mayor?
Yes.
Okay. And so I wasn't sure where you were leading if we change something.
What I'm saying is one of the at-large, they would still basically serve as they do now, but it would let people know, hey, this is the person who, if this party wins, will be mayor.
So you're talking about during the general election, it'd be identified this person will be mayor.
Yes. And then if they lose, they're a minority leader. And you can't serve as mayor unless your party wins. So, it's, like I said, keeping an at-large one, but having it be one of the ones where, if you lose and you don't get it, you're just minority leader at that point.
Sounds like a lot of complication for something that works already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we like the idea of people being able to have more of a say or an idea of who a mayor could be going into the election.
I mean, there are times when when Scott Copeland was running with us, we all knew in our caucus it's going to be Scott. And I'll be honest with you, I think the other side were pleased with that because Scott was a very balanced individual, fair and stuff. And so the biggest debate we always had was who was deputy mayor, and that was always the fun one. And I never wanted it. So this has to work.
And the thought of a minority leader, yeah, it's nice, but what's it gonna do for anybody?
And again, I think it's important that the group who gets elected select who that is.
Right.
They won.
They should select that versus the public assuming that I really want to be minority leader,
Yeah.
right? Not as an example. Any more discussion on that?
Well, just to pick up on the minority leader, and again, I didn't go that far in the charter this time, but again, from memory, I think the minority leader today is part of leadership as a
Custom.
courtesy.
Yeah.
So, why would there be reason to have there be a formal minority leader to ensure that there's somebody from the minority party in leadership? So we can talk about that. We can talk about that. But, that's the idea behind, because right now, if today the 7 or the 8 said, no, we want a minority leader in leadership, they don't have to.
Right.
And so that the suggestion is to change the charter to say you gotta have some representation in leadership. So we'll see.
Right, I hear you,
Yeah.
but, realistically, you're in leadership,
Yeah.
but you're still outvoted all the time.
True.
Right.
You just got a voice at the table.
You do, but
Let's say
you
that.
still have a voice at the
Yeah.
table otherwise.
Let's say that till we get to that section.
Yeah.
Just show of hands, any changes to how we're structured right now with the elections based on what we were just talking about
Well,
in terms of,
the part B about the Board of Ed,
no, not yet. We're still just closing out what we were just talking
just
about.
just A.
Just A.
Oh,
In terms of the breakout by district and or at large, and whether one person or they have a separate box for the mayor itself. Show of hands to keep as is.
7-1.
I kind of abstained.
Okay.
You abstained, okay.
Just going up to the blue comment there for an add to paragraph, term shall begin the Monday following election day. I believe that's just a recommended add to formalize when.
Because right now, it's just kind of,
That is what we've been doing since we voted in the charter, but it came up about 6 months ago when someone asked me why counselors start on a certain day and Board of Ed members start on a certain day. It is tradition, and back when they went from a Board of Selectmen to a town charter, they never put it in the charter, so I'm just saying it should be in the charter.
What would happen if there was some severe, not discrepancy, but challenge to
meet that.
the balance? It's really close and there's, challenge.
You're talking about a recount.
A
An
recount.
automatic recount sits in at one point, and usually, because we had that before, you had the election on Tuesday. Last time we had that, I remember it was Pat Droney, I think, or Pat Crowley and Gina Sakala. And I remember, I think the count was 2 days later. So they did it before the Monday.
It's dictated by state statute. We have to have a recount within a certain amount of time.
Okay.
Usually we end up on a weekend, the weekend before they would have taken effect anyway, so no one ever gets postponed.
It would be done by then.
It would be done by
Okay.
then, which is why I guess that's a great thing to have, because in some towns it starts the day after the election.
Yep. No, I think that
Having that would, you have a problem.
adding that in, show of hands, everyone agreed to incorporate that in?
Yeah.
Clarify, and while we're on that, the blue below for paragraph B for the Board of Ed, any concerns with it beginning the second Tuesday following election day?
Nope.
In terms of Board of Ed. Show of hands. Then the comment there, no more than 6 of whom shall be of the same political party. Right now it's at 5.
that was my suggestion again. My current thought with how the Board of Ed works is it's 5-4. So you could theoretically elect one party, by a decent majority. But say you have, either a bad actor, someone who just is kind of in it for their own agenda, could easily just sway it to the other side if they wanted to, just cause problems or, I mean, we've had some of our, not all of them, but we've had some like odder elected officials in this town. And my worry would be on like the Board of Ed, with it just being a 1-seat majority, you could really throw the Board of Ed in disarray if one person decided to act out. And I think my suggestion would just give it a little bit of cushion where, so the people, the majority you voted for can still act even if you have someone who, might have a differing opinion. Because I'm not even trying to say, that you shouldn't side with the minority party at all. My concern is more bad actors, I guess,
someone runs under the guise of being one party and they end up, they're more.
Not even that, exactly, just sometimes we have interesting characters who you don't find out truly what they're like until they're in, and you're like, that guy is just kind of,
But that could happen on both, anywhere you individual.
yes, that's true.
I don't personally think adjusting the charter, and I know what you're saying, but to go into the hypothetical of bad actors is really not a purview that I'm worried about. You know, we're structuring the procedures. Anything that's in here can have something go awry. We can't plan for that, and I don't think we ought to legislate for that. I think we ought to legislate or, you know, for, you know, the operations with our mind saying, these are all good actors. Everybody's serving, you know, for the right reason. Will there be at times where somebody, I mean, yeah, we've seen it, but I don't think from this standpoint, I don't want to begin to go through the charter and saying, well, why don't we change this because this could go awry? And to me, if we go down that road, we're going to end up, we're all going to have stories that we've known over the years and they're going to repeat themselves. There ain't a whole lot we can do about it. And if we're staying with a 2-year election, they get corrected in 2 years if they want to.
And kind of doubt there's a lot of people out there who are super hard line. There are, well, maybe there are a lot, super hard line with their party who don't go, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I would go with the other side. And, you know, that's kind of what you're talking about. You don't want somebody that's absolutely, it doesn't matter what this party says, whether I'm for it or against it, I'm gonna vote with my party. No, they have to vote their conscience. That's what they put them there for.
That was just an motoring idea.
I mean, the election is a time when the public gets to vet the candidates. And
I'm looking for it, I can't find it, my understanding is, and to your point, if, you know, if there's 9 people there and all of a sudden somebody just goes off the rails for either party, there's a process to get that person off the council or off the Board of Ed. I think it starts with the council, but I can't find it right now. And so if that were to happen and that person was eliminated, I think it's important that the party that they belong to gets to appoint somebody.
I think we have something in there.
Their party. Yeah, and so, right. So I think to your point, if there's somebody a bad actor, there's a way to get them out.
I'm not aware of a way for the council.
no, there is no,
You know what, like,
We were talking, I think you're thinking of when they, in the last commission, talked about replacing vacancies of the same party, but the other party wouldn't have a vote. And then we also added at the last commission about if a counselor was found violating the ethics,
yeah,
the rules of procedure, or the charter, that they could be voted out by unanimous vote. That is what that's what you're.
well, that
Right,
comment,
but we did not have anything for Board of Ed in that.
well, in that comment though, my memory is that there was a section in the charter that said the town council has the ability to look at any committee in the town to investigate.
Investigate,
Yeah, and so,
I don't think we have a
and I believe
removal
it's.
clause in any of this.
only. Elected, you know, we could get an attorney
For ethics, right?
opinion on them, but I believe elected, the
Okay.
only people that
You know what?
require elected are the people.
I can't find my notes.
Right.
So that was my memory that when we were
There's no recall.
going through all of that,
Right,
there was, I thought, some discussion.
maybe when we get further,
Yeah,
it will
we'll
jog.
see, right? We'll see.
I mean, but there's been times in individual caucuses where somebody was removed from their caucus because they shared whatever.
That's happened. That was the caucus level.
Yeah, but there's no recall mechanism and there's none of that. And which benefits the 2-year terms, obviously. But yeah, like Marilyn said, I think there are, under ethics, there's some things that can happen.
Of course, yeah.
You know, somebody on the Board of Ed gets arrested, goes to jail.
And we had a Board of Ed member got arrested twice, in a few years back, and so.
I think
There
the
is-
ethics clause,
There is an ethics, we have a code of ethics at the town, separate from the charter. There's a code of
Yes.
ethics, separate.
Yeah.
maybe that's what it was.
We did that last time we met.
You have to sign off on it, right?
Right.
You have to sign off.
Right, when you get elected, you have to sign off that you received it, and you'll follow it, right?
For this, item, show of hands, who wants to hold it at the 5 instead of raising it to 6? Okay. Good. Section 4. Oh, I'm sorry, section 3, any comments or suggestions there? Um, if a town councillor lives in town today, gets elected, but moves to Summers tomorrow,
There, it is addressed here. They have to be electors.
they have to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have to resign, much like I would on my other commissions or whatever. Okay.
Okay, small question about it. For our districts, like say you lived in District 2 and you moved a little bit into District 1, do you have to resign from your District 2
If
councilorship?
you are elected as a district councilor and you move outside of that district, you can no longer be that district council. Yes.
Okay, and that's ceasing to be a resident elector of said town or district councillor. Cease to hold such elective office at that time. So that's covered. Okay. Any other comments? Section 3? Section 4. A lot of cross out there up top and rewritten the next section. Any thoughts or concerns on the rewrite?
Yeah, is what's in our little cheat sheet here, right? Exactly the same as the red line.
Yes, the only reason it was added, we talked about not adding anything in the red line, but it was added in because one of our members of the public, that was their comment.
Oh.
So it was added
They
in.
copied that.
Yes, they said, I believe it was Pat Thibodeau at our public hearing supported that.
Yep.
So that's why I put it in, even though it's exactly what the red line is.
Oh,
Any concerns with that? Any suggested changes? Show of hands to keep the red line correction or update. Okay, thank you. Chapter 3, sorry, section 5. We have the red line there. We have no other input on this section. Adds in the need for a public hearing. Show of hands to keep as rewritten. Okay, thank you. Chapter 3, council. We did get some public and commissioner input. Support for stipends for counselors, that was brought up at the public hearing. And compensate counselors for their work, either stipend or salary, just minimum wage for 40 hours per week. There we go. Discussion on that. Paid town counselors.
I reached out to the town. I don't know if you saw about,
And I don't have all that information back. But we'll have that to you. It's a mixed bag. Usually towns our size, there are a number of towns our size, Manchester, West Hartford, there's a couple that come into my mind. They provide stipends to their council. Generally, nobody calls it pay, by the way. Except maybe really large, like, Hartford, New Haven, they actually call it pay, but most of them just call it a stipend. And I think we're gonna find, again, most of the towns similar in size, a little bit larger, but below the large towns are going to be providing some type of stipend to their council.
did you see how much like our towns our size usually do for a stipend?
I don't have that. That's the piece that I'm still waiting for. Actually, I've been in meetings all day and Cheryl was going to get that for me. And she left because I was in a meeting, so she didn't give it to me. So hopefully I'll be
But
able to
before we
get
get to the amount.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about having a stipend for town councilor. Sounds good.
I like the idea, like, I know several of them, and they're very busy people because of the town council work, they have to do quite a lot,
Yeah.
And yes, you're giving time to your community, but at the same time, it's a lot of work to be doing for free. And I think on giving them even something, to help offset, all the work they do.
I'm in favor of stipends. I know, forgive me for going back to Michigan, but when I was on the board there, we had, I think it was a $5,000, that's back in 1989 to 90, 5,000 stipend. And to be honest with you, I took mine on one payment in July and one payment in December because I vacation and Christmas. So, but counselors and board of ed members, when they run and get elected, there's a lot of out-of-pocket expense. They're expected to be a lot of things that cost them, and obviously they chose to do it, and we chose to do it. But having, the work that they do, having something, to show that we understand as a town that, if you run to get the office, if it's 3,000 a year and you can take it twice a year, or however you did it, I think it goes a long ways to, especially those that are running that once they're in, they may not have the income to do some things and stuff. So at least they know that they have some expense money there. I have no problem with that, so.
Cause that was my thought too. There might be people who want to be involved in town stuff who just can't afford it. Maybe you're elderly and you need to still have some sort of passive income to get by. Maybe you're a parent and you can't afford, childcare. But, on a stipend, it might make it so people who are interested in the process can get involved in it, knowing that if they win, they'll have some sort of financial compensation for their work.
Other thoughts?
Where would that money come from?
This budget.
General budget.
Our budget.
Or
Your budget that we pay into.
Is that gonna be?
Yeah,
like a
I mean,
separate-
Hold on, one at a time.
Yeah.
Go
Is
ahead.
that gonna be a separate entity, or how is this money gonna get collected? I mean, that you're talking about taking funds, that are already allocated for other things. Is that gonna raise our property taxes? Is that gonna raise our, it's gotta come from somewhere.
Well,
And it's gotta be taken from somewhere. So how is this money gonna get generated?
when I calculated, and I calculate on the high end as if you paid them all minimum wage, like if they work 40 hours at minimum wage, I think I got around 700,000 term, which it depends on how you see it in the grand scheme of things. I mean, the last town council approved a 700,000 for pickleball fields, so you could be like, our councilors worth that much to be less.
Before we even get into amounts, right?
Yeah.
It's the concept of, is a stipend appropriate for what they're doing? Right? And yes, of course, the big thing is the impact to budget.
Mhm.
Right? That's something that would have to be evaluated and addressed both by the town council with the proposal and Matt's team. Where does the money come from? Whatever money that is.
I have a clarifying question. I'm gonna admit, I don't really understand the word stipend. I don't know what that means.
It's not an
Is that a payment? Is that just like getting a salary? Or is there something special about calling it a stipend?
It's a lump sum.
Stipend usually considered a
But how many
benefit.
hours?
But it's taxable income, just like,
No, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
It would be, but it's more of a benefit more so than anything else.
It's usually like a one-time, it's like a set amount. It's not like a recurring.
I got that, but the taxable part was, again,
It's
I'm looking
taxable
for
income.
memory here a little bit, right? The concept of some number, doesn't matter what the number is, of a property tax rebate. Is that a stipend? Or
Oh,
is that just another way of thinking about
there was
compensation?
discussion about
That's right,
offering
a
Property
property
tax.
tax rebate or
Right.
refund or reduction,
rather than
whatever word, okay?
stipends.
So that, I just want to put that on the table, that got some leverage last time around. And again, if this is valuable to hear or not, it got killed last time because of the environment we were in. We were just coming off of all the stuff that happened around the school system and the huge cuts. And it was like, I'm not going anywhere near paying anybody that's not getting paid right now. It just died. But in general, it seemed as if people were supportive of the concept. It just was the wrong time. So maybe this is a better time to do it, okay? And now I'm gonna ask another question, which I'm not sure this is the right time to ask it, but this concept that's been thrown out there, that when we're all said and done, and we have our recommendations, could there be a page 1, page 2 of recommendations to avoid the public just saying no, and you lose everything?
Yeah, and that have that in terms of how do we submit this?
Yeah,
to the
and I would
council?
suggest that we at least be thinking, this might be something that's the page 2 item.
Right.
Right.
Just-
So in your opinion, is there a way to give them money without being a taxable?
I'm honestly, the thought of doing a tax break,
Right.
I don't know if that's not taxable as well.
No.
Right, still
Because-
benefit.
Yeah, it's,
Well, fire department personnel, when I was on the volunteer fire department, we had a tax break and abatement. It was taxable at one point, then I had a very big battle with the IRS and it got changed into an abatement of some sort, not a refund, which was taxable. And for the 100% disabled vets, they get an abatement on their house, on the property of their house. So, and that's not taxable.
right, but in this case, you're compensating someone
For
for
services.
the services that they do.
See,
Well, the
my,
fire department, you're compensating them for a service and that's not taxed. You're compensating them for being a firefighter and doing something. They just don't get it for being a bump on a log.
if we're gonna pay a stipend, I'd rather pay a stipend. I'm not a big fan of having a tax abatement for a town councilor who's deciding the taxes on everybody else. I'll be honest with you,
And if they can, what about those council members that live in the town, do not own property?
That was gonna be my suggestion, like,
well, we have the veterans one here for veterans, okay? And people would ask all the time, did you apply for that? And I'll be honest with you, 2005 into 2019, I was making decisions on taxes. And I felt guilty with taking an exemption when I'm going deciding what the tax rate's gonna be. So I never took it. I still haven't taken it. So I just think this sound, if you're running for office and, then you get the budget approved and people are screaming about the budget, but you get it, it's just the phrasing would be unpopular. I think if you're gonna just give a stipend, and the other thing is too, this has been discussed, the last charter, I was on council, it was discussed then about giving a stipend to counselors, and everybody was afraid to say, do it because, whatever. But once again, we're all here, and I don't think anybody's on the council here right now, and so basically somebody's once sooner or later gonna decide, a town our size with the work that these folks do on both board and council, a small stipend to be able to compensate for expenses that I know they're gonna have. I guarantee every spouse of somebody on the council will appreciate it because, they will get yelled at every time they're spending money. You know what I'm talking about.
I do, but I come from a whole different faction.
Yeah,
I think, I don't think they should get a stipend. And if my husband's watching right now, maybe.
It's not like, maybe tomorrow we'll watch it.
we'll talk about tomorrow.
But I just think, do we have to get compensated for volunteering for our community?
Well,
I
and
just come from that
And
point.
again, I'm on 3 or 4 different commissions and boards and all that. I'm not saying I spend more time than the town council does, but I volunteer my time because that's what I choose to do. I don't want a stipend. I don't want to get paid for it. I raise my hand because it's my community. And I struggle with the stipend thing, and one town councilor did tell me, don't do stipends.
Could always refuse it, couldn't they?
What's that?
They could refuse it if they
They
wanted.
certainly could.
Right, so there's that out.
Like I said, my thing is like, it benefits people who can't serve at the moment, like, just because of the time commitment. Like, the people on the council right now can do so and have the money to do so, but I feel like there's a lot of good.
But I
people
don't
out
think
there.
we're talking about the level of stipend that you were having.
by the way, just so you clarify, I'm thinking about a $1,500 a year or something like that, or.
That's not gonna make. or
That's
break
all I'm
the
talking, I'm talking about something to come, I'm not talking about hourly pay or 700,000 at all. I'm just talking about for those times that they do things, in the role of their public service, for just to say, we're gonna cover some of the expenses, so that's all.
Yeah, well, that's what I almost wish I almost wonder if we should push this back until we have a better idea of what towns our size do pay these people, so we have a better idea of like 'Cause I feel like we're all in generally in favor of a stipend. It's the matter of how much is, you know.
Just to be clear, right, I think you got two of us that are, I'm on the fence,
Yeah,
and we've heard one no, so it's not all of us that are on board. So I really like the idea of saying, I remember a little bit about what other towns do. But I think that's really a great point. I think we should get that before we decide this, because that'll be a big factor for me. If I find out we're one of two towns in all of Connecticut that don't, that will weigh on me. And I don't know that now for sure. So I like your suggestion to postpone until we get that.
So let's do it this way. First, those in favor of further investigating the stipend, just a show of hands.
Yeah, other towns, is that what you mean? Like getting, yeah.
Those opposed?
I just abstain.
I'm gonna abstain too.
So, just a quick question, in association with investigating further, if a stipend or if it is agreed, and I guess this is a question for Mr. Kotler, does it have to go through the council as to where that money is coming? My big issue is where is it gonna come from? Because it's gotta come from somewhere, and is there gonna have to be like a line added to a certain part of the budget to allow that, and that has to go through the council also, so we can't just arbitrarily say we're gonna give everybody $3,000, it has to come from somewhere.
Well,
And that's
we're
good.
making recommendations
Right.
anyways, right? And it would have to be a budgeted
So,
item.
yeah, so in the budget, we have a town council cost center. So we would add salaries to that or stipends, depending upon what the final term is. And it would be appropriated in there. So every year, whatever the vote is in terms of the public saying it's gonna be 1,500 or 1,000 or whatever it is, we would just automatically put in that line item that amount, since that's something that's required by charter to do that.
And just to say it out loud, everything we're talking about would be for 2027.
yeah, everything would be the next town
Right,
council.
it can't happen for this year.
No, yeah.
The new town council,
If you put that,
or would it be the
No.
next fiscal year?
We would have to.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mhm.
Right, yeah.
you put that on here, and then you send it to the people in November and say, we want to spend this to give to the council.
Right.
But that goes to what Tom was saying, that's there's some things that have to be voted on. There's the basic stuff that, and again, I think this is where we had challenges with the last vote. Everything was lumped together. So if you didn't like one piece, you're gonna say no.
You
And
lose
that's what I
everything.
think happened, right? And I do think that there's a value as we go through these. The last step will be, okay, what is the neutral stuff?
Hmm.
And what is the stuff that's a little more
You've seen,
nuanced
Yeah.
for the public? Right? And there's some things that there might be 2 or 3 buckets that we have to put in.
Yeah, you can have multiple questions.
Right.
I mean, that's not.
Right, but it's the council that determines the questions, but the commission can make
Yeah, we'll,
recommendations.
right, and that's my perspective is we'll make the recommendations for buckets. And we'll see what the council says from there.
Just a quick look up on the internet. There was no database relative to how many towns provide stipends in Connecticut to their councils.
I think we have to do like a deep dive and.
Well, actually, CCM, they do a annual salary survey,
Okay.
and most of that information is there.
Well, that's exciting.
It's not going to be comprehensive because it requires the towns to actually provide it, and some towns don't. So it's going to be a selection of those communities that answers the survey,
Right.
that you'd be able to find that out.
Okay, good.
And Sheila, didn't we do that last time? Don't we have that data somewhere, at least?
We did not, the question of stipends was shut down almost immediately, so we did not do any research in that,
So we've all agreed we're gonna
to
table
the
that.
best of my memory.
We'll table that. We'll follow up next time.
And just to let you know, the other level of that is we'll call around to all the surrounding towns as well and physically ask them if they pay their council members.
And that's gonna be towns similar to Infield's
Um,
demographic.
well,
size.
it's been, if there is a good selection from CCM, if they have a lot, because I mean, again, our size of community usually does respond to those. So I think our size would be pretty well represented, but the second level question then is, what about around us?
Yep.
And generally, most of the towns around us are small enough they're probably not doing anything. But we would ask that question just to see, because again, maybe they are giving tax abatements, I don't know, and I think it'd be worth,
Okay.
again, the phone calls and again, we're talking about less than 10 phone calls.
Sure.
So.
I think it would be nice if they got town cell phones,
I think I'll what?
town
They
cell
got
phones,
iPads. So more do they
as
need?
opposed to stipends.
iPads. It's good. They can FaceTime. It's all good. Well, moving on to,
With the new phone system, they'll be able to make calls.
Hey, I still have my iPad I bought out from the town on the, so,
section
still
2.
works.
Section 2, we have the redlined item, and then we also have a suggestion that sentence at the end, paragraph, council leadership shall consist of mayor, deputy mayor, and minority leader.
So that's again, the same
Yep.
exact
Yep.
thing that's in the red line. It's just was recommended by one counselor and one member of the
Yep.
public.
And I'm gonna ask one question. What about the unaffiliated? Not that we get many unaffiliated people elected, but should the unaffiliated council member or the unaffiliated party also have a representation at that table?
So let's be clear about what this is, right? So within state statute, there allows a membership or a portion of council to meet to talk about the agenda, right? That's leadership.
Yep.
And they don't really have authority to do anything other than in that meeting say, and the intent is to provide in advance of the council meeting an understanding of what's going to be on the agenda. So they then, allowed by the statute, go to their caucuses and talk about the agenda before they get there.
When do they add stuff to the consent agenda component?
So,
Is that not in that
well,
meeting?
let me say what the law is first. Then I'll tell you what the custom is. So the law, makes these caveats to the open meeting because in theory, 3 council members should be something that you notice to the public that it's a meeting. But there's a little quirk in the law about these non-meetings. And this is one of those non-meetings the law allows for, right? The caucuses that they do, that's a quirk.
Right.
It's allowed, but it's different than what the open meeting statute say. And in none of these meetings, decisions are not to be made, right? So practice is that, I don't know if you have 6 votes to have this adopted.
Right.
We need to talk about it,
Mhm.
right? Depending upon what the nature of the issue is, if I have no choice and I have to do it at that meeting, it goes on the agenda. If I have a couple meetings that I can play with, I amend the agenda, I take it off, let them talk about it a little bit. The next agenda, they'll see, here it is, right? And then we can have that conversation. And I can make a conversation. Now, where it's a little bit different is on like the appointments of the boards and commissions. Because again, a lot of these are Republican seat or Democrat seats, which are, again, more customary than although there are some commissions that do have representation requirements. But a lot of them don't. And they may say, we want this person on that agenda, to be voted on, because it's their party and they have that right to do that. So it's, I think, I know why this is brought up. I think it's more of an answer to, trying to think how to say this the most politically correct way, Greg.
Trying to figure out.
Well, it.
Give me a hint, I'll say it for you. Keep you out
No,
of trouble.
no, I'll come out and say, I mean, over the years, in these leadership meetings that again, are just to talk about what's going on in the agenda to give the heads up to council members, there's, well, you don't need to be here, right? Because majority has control here. You don't need to be there. There's nothing in the charter that says that you need to be here. And so this is more of a response to that threat than really something that's practical. I mean, honestly, from my standpoint, having an educated council is the best counsel for me going into a meeting. And if I was told that, the other council members party, or if there was multiple parties or whatever, couldn't be in that meeting, I'm calling. I'm sitting down, I'm meeting with them, because I want them to be able to go back to, whatever the size of their caucus is and say, here's what's going on, because it helps me help them make good decisions.
Yeah, it's for the most part, the minority leader, I was in majority the whole time, but leadership goes and meets with town managers and go over the, and then what happens is that could be on a Thursday or Friday, and then usually on a Sunday night, we had our caucus, and that's when our representative, ours was Scott Copeland, so he would share the discussions and his discussions with the other side and what we came to agreed and whatever. And then, and so that's the primary role of it. On Board of Ed, it's the same thing. It's minority leader goes back to that caucus and it goes over what was discussed and by leadership, so.
Thoughts on the change as written?
I'm for it.
Would there be any need for an unaffiliated council member to be on it, or not really? Again,
Yeah,
I think,
I don't know when's the last time.
We had an unaffiliated counselor that went from D to U and then eventually to R. And while he was U, he had to declare in writing which side he was going to caucus with.
And we had
so he was able to caucus with.
He was able to
Okay.
caucus.
back in the early 2000s, 1999, we had one that, Carol went from Democrat to unaffiliated to Republican, so.
Okay. I do think there's a value having a minority leader. I agree with you, and I've seen on a number of town council meetings, like, we didn't know about that, and this would address that, right? Whichever party's in control, right, the minority, we don't want them to have that, right? We want visibility, and I think there's a value for the whole town council to know what's going on and be in that, so that they can't talk to their party, so they can't get their speaking points out, or reach out to you with questions, or whatever they have to do in preparation for the council. So, show of hands in favor of that red line. Okay. Section 3, there was just one, update, having a organizational meeting. Any other thoughts, comments on that one? No. Show of hands, all good with that one? Okay. Section 4, a couple more edits there. Just clarification, I believe, on both of those. Show of hands in support of those red lines. Okay. Section 5, some minor edits on the bottom.
Go without saying, if it's against the general statutes, it's against the general statutes, why does it have to be in there?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Right.
I forgot who suggested it, but yeah. I like having it there, states the obvious.
that
Your
it
voice.
states the obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna cost us about an extra penny in ink.
Only because it was red, not black.
Right.
Show of hands in support of that section as edited. Okay. Section 6. Couple edits there up top and some additions in the middle. We do have commissioner feedback on that. First, let's go with just the edits as written. Any questions or concerns with those? Okay.
Actually, I was gonna say, I was reading the bit where it's like, for all ordinances shall be published once in their entirety, it's gonna be changed in summary. Why can't, it was like, I don't understand why not just both? Like, so you can read a summary if you want, but
Ask her why.
This is the published version.
This is what has to go into the newspaper. Well, this is twofold. One is to take out the words in the newspaper and
Yeah,
just
the
put
newspaper
as
part's fine.
required by statute because they keep trying to, CCM keeps pushing to have that removed because nobody reads the newspaper anymore. And it's expensive. And the reason in summary is to be able to put on there that this, ordinance was passed at a town council meeting on such and such a date regarding this subject, so it's clear what it is. The full ordinance may be found online or at the town clerk's office at no charge.
Okay.
The reason is that sometimes they're 3 pages long and I have to pay for a 3-page legal ad. It's very expensive for the town.
Got
And
it.
I don't think it's cost
So,
effective.
and I think this gives every resident the ability to access it.
They can
if they're
access it,
interested.
we'll email it to them free, we'll give them a copy free, we'll mail it free.
But so it still exists to look at, just be published.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was my
Oh,
question.
yeah,
She wants us to keep it
absolutely,
full
yes,
length.
absolutely.
That was my only concern.
It was just to, not be, have to, publish it.
It saves money.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, it just says a rate after. That's my bad.
and any other concerns with the red line? We go into the comments on the chart Sheila provided. Public emergency ordinances shall be passed by 2/3 majority vote only last 60 days after passage and so on. Um,
Yeah, that was me.
yeah, go ahead.
Just a thought. It's very, not arbitrary, but there's no definition of what a public emergency could be, Nothing against either party, but they could all of a sudden come up with a public emergency and pass it. And it's not really a public emergency. So
Mhm.
should there be a definition of some sort? I don't know. But on an extreme thing where you're passing something so quickly without any kind of public input, maybe you need a few other guidelines on the ability to pass that, and that it just doesn't last forever.
Right.
That if you want to make it a permanent ordinance for some odd reason,
You have to
then
formally
you
do it.
go through the full process. You just don't knock out another emergency.
What would be an example you're thinking of?
I have none. It was just a wild idea.
It's Matt, back in 2011, we had the storm. And I remember, of course, we met and approved them, I think it was 4 million that we got, I think we got reimbursed from FEMA, but to start getting the town cleaned up. I don't know that we passed anything,
No ordinance.
no ordinance, okay. So
I believe that is the definition of, an emergency in the rules and procedures.
I would say you were talking about it with them.
I read it,
Yeah, well, they're talking about making it a little bit more stringent, if you remember,
right.
on that, so it's more difficult.
And as far as, that Freedom of Information Commission defines public emergency for meetings as, kind of life and limb. The roof's gonna fall, even because there's so much snow on it from the storm, that kind of stuff. So we could take some of that verbiage.
I mean, just trying to think what happens and where they would see a public emergency, I mean, for an ordinance, because this is only talking about ordinances, so, expenditures and money, that's gonna be a resolution. A lot of the rules, but I mean, what is going to go into the code book, effectively is what we're talking about. And I can't, in 30 some years as being a manager, I'm just trying to think of where an emergency code gets adopted, right? I mean,
I honestly think that this was probably put into the charter to try to be in alignment with the Freedom of Information Commission to say, oh, there are some public emergencies, but we would never do it as an ordinance.
Yeah.
It would be a resolution.
Yeah.
Public
I mean, things.
an emergency meeting and a resolution, we wouldn't do it as an ordinance, so it
Not
really
saying
doesn't
that
need to be in there.
somebody would try that.
Yeah.
Right, but, like we had said before, it's an off chance, so scratch that in.
I thought there was something in here about imminent danger. Something.
Yeah.
I mean, I just say that at least historically, when I was here last, and I don't think there's anything like this, I mean, councils usually take it very seriously, the changes to the codes, and want to make sure that there is a lot of ability for public input in these things. Again, that's not an indicator of the future, because you have a council that's totally different, but typically they're very public oriented. Very rarely can I think of anything where they try to subvert the public, contribution.
At that point, the public's gonna have a backlash, they're gonna feel the consequences of that.
And section, or chapter 6, section 5 talks about emergency appropriations. I don't know if that's
That's where I
what
read it.
yeah. Gary, any other thoughts on that?
Nah, I'm good, yeah. Just an idea.
Okay. So, in terms of how section 6 is written, show of hands to accept how it's, revised. Okay, thank you. Section 7. There's one edit down there on the bottom, and then we did have commissioner feedback.
And
The
that
red
was
line
more-
edits are kept, removed, and certified the same to the town clerk as clerk of the council.
The town clerk doesn't need to certify it as to the town clerk. That was something we probably should have caught when, at the first commission, when we made the recommendation to change that to town clerk. We just didn't catch it.
So just fixing the wording, really.
Right, because, the town clerk is the one who certifies the petition pages anyway. I don't know why I said registrar of voters, so correcting that.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that section? Show of hands to accept the red line plus the edits to, clarify the certification side. Okay, thank you. Section 8. Anything on that one? And I think this is where, we were talking about earlier in terms of the council to very investigate any and all departments, there's agencies of the town. Would this include the Board of Ed as part of that?
Looking later down, it doesn't look like they have the power to remove Board of Ed, just their own self.
Well, it's a power to investigate.
Yeah, they have the power to investigate, but not the power to remove.
Isn't the Board of Ed a state appointed, it's a state,
It's an elected position.
right, I'm saying, it's under state guidance, though, I thought. Some of their rules and regulations.
But this really is just giving council the authority, the power to investigate.
Yeah. No, my question is more for the next section. I probably should have held off
Yeah.
on saying it.
But I think, because I wonder, the way that these, they use these words, I don't know if it does or doesn't exclude the Board of Education.
Okay,
Should
question.
investigate them otherwise.
Should it include the Board of Ed?
My opinion should
Would
have,
an agency of the town be the Board of Ed?
I don't know.
Okay, that's
I think we should.
I mean, I don't know.
great.
I think we should make it more clear. The town council has the ability to investigate themselves, Board of Ed, and any committee in town. I would say just make it clear that they can generally investigate anybody for wrongdoing. So we don't end up in a situation where it's like, well, maybe like, a legal situation. Where it's like, well, maybe you can't do that because you guys didn't say in your charter that you can.
Well, it does say any and all departments, so that
Yeah.
would technically include the Board of Education.
Well, my clarification I would want is, you might check with the attorney,
Yeah.
that, I know, because I served on both, and I know there were certain things we were under the scope of the state and some of the town, and there were some things the town couldn't interfere with the board because it's under state mandate.
Yeah.
So I just want to make.
There's probably a state statute that
Yeah.
explains all this.
Right,
And that's what I would ask the town attorneys.
yeah, that was just a clarification. I understand what you're saying, but like P and Z and all them, they're appointed by the council, that's the town, but the Board of Ed, under the Department of Education, that they have their authority in a different place. They're elected by the electors and they governed by, the town of Enfield, but I think some of the stuff that they're required or they're,
So I would almost say maybe we should delay decision on this too until we.
Well, I think we need input to see if we're allowed to add Board of Education specifically in this.
Yeah,
I see.
that's the phrase I was looking at. Yeah, the Board of Ed is an agency of the state.
Yes.
Right, that's what I was, she said it better than me, so I'll just listen to her.
Any page on the State Department of Ed website at the top says, the local Board of Educations are not agencies of the town.
Yeah.
So we didn't,
And that's what I thought, I just wasn't sure.
That's why I was asking.
so we just need to look into legally the town council even has the authority to do so.
Well,
Because
this
then
is
you
just
clarify either.
investigation. This is.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, another question is that they may not be able to investigate the Board of Education, but, you know, they did just investigate expenditures by the Board of Education.
right.
And that was kind of a joint agreement to do
Right.
that, but I just don't, again, those words are, those.
The expenditures though come under the guidelines that they're also supported by the taxpayers, so they got, you know, it's one of those things where there's money from the town given to the Board of Ed as well as state, so
Yes.
there's a certain amount of right there, but,
Okay, we'll wait for.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone agrees, we'll just wait for.
I just wanted to bring it up because there's a little difference there and.
Okay. Well, from that one, section 9.
I think I have the same thing where I think the town council should, if legal, have the ability to take people off committees and the Board of Ed. Or, you know, if they deem, you know, it necessary. Like under the same like rule set, you know, a unanimous vote. But again, if we don't know if the Board of Ed can be,
Yeah, Sheila, you can just ask on that one too.
and then I'd say we just hold a delay on that as well until we know for certain.
Any concerns or issues with the red lines that are there?
No, I just want to add to it really.
Yep.
So we really are kind of tabling it to see if it applies to, could apply to the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I would say we should, does the
Right
town
now-
right now have the ability to take people off of committees or are they?
The council can take people off committees, because
Alright.
basically, other than the ones that Matt appoints, they appoint.
Okay, I didn't know if they could take them off or once they were on, they were there. Okay, so really just for Board of Ed then. period.
Barring that feedback, as far as what's written on 8 and 9, everyone good with the way it's written, pending just the addition of Board of Ed based on, just show of hands on that? Because if the attorney says no, then we're good on those two as written. Okay. 10, any issues with the fiscal year? I'd like him to change it from January to December. You think he'd do that?
No.
11. Accountant, anything on 11? No, okay.
So I just, and I'm saying the difficulty in this right now in the current selection environment we have for auditors. The part where they can't serve more than 3 consecutive years probably will be an issue in the future, because right now, there's really two auditing firms that we're gonna be bouncing back and forth. And that's assuming that there's 2 or 3 years from now.
How do other towns handle this? Are you aware?
Normally they, you know, at least the towns and cities I've served in, we don't have that, not served for more than 3 consecutive years.
Why do we have that in there?
Just for integrity of it stuff.
So
The
we
only
don't
thing-
become too connected to like one?
Yeah, we talked about one years ago, and we talked about the fact unless waived by the council by 2/3 majority vote, that way, that was solved. Say for instance, because I know auditors, I mean, sometimes you put out for bid and
You get nothing.
you get nothing and you're sitting there, and so given the council the ability to waive, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah,
There's some flexibility.
some flexibility if that scenario,
But it should be a 2/3. It's not a simple.
oh yeah, it should be 2/3. You want to have broad support.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value in changing auditors on a regular
About like
basis.
7 or 8.
But that's in an environment where you have a lot of auditors to choose from. You know, 10 years ago, I mean, how many auditing firms were there 10 years ago that they don't exist today?
Yeah.
I can think of 4 right off the bat. Because they would always bid on our audits. And so it's becoming a little bit more difficult. And 3 years is a good time frame to have auditors and then switch, because
Right.
what typically happens the first year, they're
Yeah.
learning what it is, and the next 2 years, they're kind of actually making back money because they lost it on the first year, not understanding what it is that they were in for. But
Does the town usually sign a 3-year agreement on that?
generally it's 3 years.
Um,
Primarily because that,
Because-
but I would tell you that if I was here, we wouldn't change that 3-year cycle, right?
Mhm.
But if there were, if it were, our current CBIZ, if what we got was CBIZ and Joe's financial audits, I'm not going with Joe's financial
Right.
audits, right?
Right.
And so then we'll be back to the issue that we don't have any viable, and we'll have to bid it out again.
Yeah.
We'll figure some else.
Thoughts on the addition or the modification to unless waived by 2/3 vote?
I would say maybe just say a set amount of counselors, because I'm trying to think of it, I was trying to do the math real quick, what is 2/3 of 11? I don't know if that comes down to an actual, like, strong.
8.
It would be 8.
Eight,
Yeah.
You
So,
can never round down your own round.
There you go.
there we go, that's just my clarification. So legally, if we say 2/3, it automatically moves.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Show of hands for that modification. Okay, thank you. Section 12. For the red line, the only question I wrote down was, should it be unanimous or supermajority? Supermajority.
That's what I was gonna ask.
That's tricky.
That was Tom will probably tell you, that was a huge
It was.
topic, and they felt if they were going to go so far as to remove an elected counselor, that the people elected, that it should be a majority, it should be egregious enough that it's a unanimous vote of everyone except for the person or persons involved.
Cause I mean, currently, cause we changed the rules, so if, say for some reason, the minority party had someone that they wanted to get removed, that minority party would then get to choose a replacement.
Right, that's further down.
Yeah. Do we not do that already?
No, that's the next section.
That's my bad. I thought we did that already.
No worries.
Okay.
This is just that removal side.
Cause my opinion on it depends on how we appoint new counselor in their place. If anybody could be put on, I think it should be a unanimous. But if the party that is losing the member gets to choose, then I think we can move it down to 8.
No, I even said supermajority.
Supermajority, that's 8 though, right? Or am I wrong? That's
See,
No, that would actually be 9.
I personally like to have the unanimous vote only because of the fact is you can have a council with 8-3. 8 is 2/3, so you can still have one party. And so I think that would be a little bit of a, you don't want one party removing somebody from the other party. They only have, you gotta be careful of that. So, because you get to 2/3, you're talking about one party can have that.
Yeah, that's why I said my opinion on it, Matt, depends on how the new person gets appointed.
Yeah, I think that comes down further, but I just think unanimous, if it's egregious enough and the ethics come back, then
Right now, the way the council is right now,
either.
I would not want the Democrats to be able to say, I want that Republican out.
Right, I wouldn't
I don't
want
want that.
Republicans, if they had 8, to say that Democrats out.
Yeah, no, like I said, that's why my thing is, it depends on how you put in a new person, I think.
No,
No, it should be-
no matter, even if the Republicans have the ability today, using today as the example, right? Even if the Republicans can replace with another Republican, I don't want the Democrats kicking out a Republican.
Mhm.
If they're gonna kick somebody out, it's gotta be everybody voting yes, including,
Well, you said 9, which there would be no way for you to have 9. It would have to be,
I thought it was 8.
no,
Supermajority, is that?
Supermajority council's 8.
Supermajority of the council.
Yeah, so I think unanimous is more.
Yeah, 8, so.
So it'd be the 10 remaining council members.
Yeah,
And I think you bring up a good point, right? That takes out the whole party affiliation factor, regardless of which way the town council is structured.
Yeah. I mean, if it's egregious enough to where you get 10 votes, then I think, the other thing too, you gotta remember too, the community is gonna be watching this. You wanna remove the politics out of something like that as best you can. So if you get 10 votes, you kind of neutralizes anybody complaining or attacking, so. it's already hard enough to do that and with the emotions of all that without having that, so.
Any other thoughts?
I would just say again, go back to this once we know on board of it as well.
We can circle back.
Yeah, but on this as is, I'm fine with it.
Show of hands as is for now.
You vote? Are you a
Yes.
no or are you abstaining? You gotta tell me.
I will abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Chapter, we're cruising into chapter 4, if that's all right.
I did not.
Sure.
I've already. with-
We got one, like, it's just one page long, so if we wanna just cruise through that, we'll just circle back when we get to 5. Appointment and removal, town manager. Good thing he's sitting, right? Right,
This is comfortable, isn't
Just
it,
give it-
Matt?
So-
If we want to.
so they did make some modifications in terms of experience, as well as the location of where they reside. Updated that, living in the town of Enfield is strongly preferred. Although I thought that where it says town of Enfield are strongly preferred, cross out the manager shall devote full time to the duties of office during the term of office shall reside in said town. That kind of conflicts with the red line of strongly preferred.
Wait a minute. That was a suggestion that someone disagreed with the red line.
No, I'm reading just from my own notes, and I didn't even get to that one. Because there's a shall reside in town that was not changed. Even though they are strongly preferred to live in the town. Next line.
No, this,
Candidates are strongly preferred.
it says town of Enfield,
So,
candidates who are residents of the town of Enfield are strongly preferred.
right,
Where did I? where
and then
did
to
we
keep
miss-
going, the manager shall devote full time to duties of the office and during the term of office shall reside in.
Oh,
said
that should,
town.
yeah, that should.
Okay, so that's gotta just agree with whatever we decide here.
Well, you could be a candidate that lives outside the town, but you are blessed with that
Well, this-
position, you move your butt.
Well, yeah. That's forcing it, which I think the intention of
Yeah.
the other red lines was to take out the requirement to live in town.
I would say the only requirement we should have is just to make it clear, just they have to work in town, they can't, like Zoom or anything like, you have to live close enough to work in the town. I'm sure that's what the council would prefer anyway, but I don't know if another thing you just want to codify into it. So,
Matt, do you know, I believe the reason that they discussed this was because our town attorney's office had a legal opinion that it wasn't enforceable to say it must be a resident of the town. It was not enforceable. So just to give you some background as to why that was even changed.
I mean, we've had times where we've hired somebody well, the chief of police is a good example. His kids were going to school still in Willimantic, and so it was giving him the ability to do that. It's preferred to have them live in town.
Right.
But and the other thing is, if we get somebody, we hire a new town manager, not that we're looking, Matt, okay? But, you get somebody who lives in.
You don't be doing me a favor.
Well, you get somebody who lives in Manchester and has 3 kids and stuff, and they're
Right.
living in the family home, which has been handed down for 3 generations. It's,
Well, I think,
it's obviously, if you hire from somebody out of town,
I think there's an air, right, there's a certain circle around Enfield that
Yeah.
they should reside in. Whether or not we want to stipulate that in here.
I mean.
But I
legally,
think
don't
if the town pays to relocate someone, I think they should have to relocate to Enfield.
So,
oh, I would,
Right.
yeah, I personally agree with that.
Right, and I think that's the only stipulation. I'm okay if someone lives in the surrounding town and they want to commute. We all commute to jobs. Right. Right? I agree that they should actually have to physically be in the office. I don't think that anyone's going to get away with not doing that nowadays, almost. But I do think that maybe we consider adding something that if the town relocates, they must be relocated to the town of Enfield. Because we're paying money.
Like, you mean like if they choose to move at any point while being town
No.
manager?
No, if we take someone from Missouri to come here to be our town manager.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
Florida.
someone from Florida.
In Florida.
Well, we did, we had Brian, I remember, and
Yeah.
came from, we interviewed, I think, in Florida, he was from Ohio, but I remember, we brought him up, so that's different. And even Matt was, we were in Lincoln Park, Michigan, my hometown neighbor.
Right, absolutely. Again, if they're already in a surrounding town, they have a situation like Chief, that's completely different. They're gonna do the commute, they're gonna pay the price for the commute, that's fine. But if we're actually physically relocating them,
Yeah.
and I mean from a far enough place, not from a Willimantic, not from, right, and we can define that, they should be relocated to the town.
Yes, we have. to
Because we're
move.
paying the money, we might as well get some of it back in tax dollars from the individual.
So,
Self-funded
Yeah,
for the town.
that's true. That's a very good.
so if you can do that already,
Is that
does it have to be a
anymore-
part of the charter?
That's what I was thinking. We were talking about this because we were talking about it because it might not be enforceable as.
Is that any more enforceable than saying that the town manager, is that?
Well, I think that's,
That's more contractual than it is.
I think this language gets around that, because what you're doing is saying we strongly prefer it, and then that can be
part of the
handled as part of the
contract?
negotiations, because again,
Got it.
but what you're trying to do with this is increase the pool of candidates when it becomes open. And let's say that it's, a candidate is from the town of Windsor. Right, they've lived there for 20 years, or 15 years. Their kids are a few years away from graduation. They may make a decision not to apply to this job because they know, I'm not gonna move.
Right, yeah.
Right, and there could be other towns, within a good distance that have that same impact. You're denying yourself, as the town of Enfield, a really good candidate because you're required to live here. The council members that I've talked to about this, what they've said is same thing like you said. If it's an in-state candidate that's relatively close, we're not gonna make a move. But if it's someone coming from Nebraska, why would they choose any place else but here?
Right.
Especially if we're paying tax dollars.
Yeah.
To move them, why wouldn't they come here? And so I think that's a contractual piece that, when you're thinking of relocating from Nebraska to Connecticut, unless you're from Connecticut originally, you don't really know Connecticut. You're not gonna know, which place is a better place to live until you make that decision of going there. And then you start looking around. And so contractually, you can have the upper hand with that, make sure they come living in that.
And when the
So
council,
that's where they would live.
the council and even board, when they would interview somebody, we always had our questions, and that was always a question, is your family all set to relocate and stuff to Enfield and stuff? Would you stay in? That was part of our decision making, so.
One other question I had, just as a question, it does say second line, to serve an indefinite period. Any concerns with that?
I think that's the practice we are right now.
Well, so as a manager, there's no such thing as, indefinite means something different. Because I think most people think indefinite is a long period of time.
It's just, it doesn't have a legal end to it. It's just, that's contractual anyways. Usually it's a 3-year contract we do. Huh? You've been coming back.
Every
You just
two-
keep-
Every
2
10
weeks.
years.
Every 10 years. The reality is that, you have the ability as a council to get rid of the town manager anytime you want, right? So what's the point of saying 3 years? In Michigan, Michigan, I can't think of any indefinite contracts. They're all 2 years or 3 years. And it really, for a council, it becomes very, because I helped councils overcome this while I was there. It becomes very uncomfortable because, they want to get rid of someone. So they're just going to write out, wait to the contract and then just not renew it, right? But it creates a lot of issues within the community then because, especially if it's someone's, this would be their 4th 3-year contract or 4-year contract. And they have a constituency themselves within there. And so it creates a lot of issues. And it just builds and builds and builds because everyone knows what they're doing. They're waiting until December 31st for it to end. Where this, again, it really is, you get 6 members of council, the show's over.
It's really stating the town manager shall serve at the pleasure of the council. It's really-
Yeah, so that is what that
That's
is.
the way it should be, so.
Any other thoughts, questions on this?
So, on line 4, is this the legalese talking, where the qualifications of the town manager may have been in public administration or a closely related field? I think there's people out there that may not necessarily have experience in those areas, but they're very intelligent nonetheless and could still do a good job of being a town manager.
And those suggestions I wrote, if you take out shall and you put may, then why have the rest of it? Because you don't have to abide by anything if it's just may, legalese wise.
And then you've got the word and, so it's may have this, may have that, and have 5 years experience.
Right. To me, it should be shall have been a public administration for the college degree.
Or close.
Yeah, or a closely related field. But then you say, or any equivalent combination of education and experience. What combination of what education and what experience? Because you haven't defined it. So why have it in
Well,
there?
that's, I mean, somebody who's a chef could be just as knowledgeable about the town laws and legals and the charter as anybody who's had experience with public administration. But in here, you're saying that they couldn't apply, they couldn't run because they don't have the background of a public administration.
Right, but again, when it says may,
Mhm.
and you say may.
Right.
It could be anything.
Mhm.
And if it says may, and the line of, or any equivalent combination of education or experience of any kind, because it's may. It could be, like you said, you could have a combination of 2 years of being a chef. And according to that, it would qualify you to be the town manager.
That would qualify you to apply.
To apply,
Yeah.
right,
Mm.
but if you're the only applicant and, yeah, you can make a pretty good, ceviche, so let's hire the guy. Can you make ceviche?
I stay away from that.
I do agree that
There's other things.
getting shall back in there instead of may makes it more definitive.
Yes.
And I do think that it still gives the town council enough leeway with experience and education to find the right candidate, a chef notwithstanding.
Right. If you have shall in there, and if you don't, if you keep it as may, then why have equivalent of anything? You don't need that, it's just a bunch of verbiage for no reason.
But if a chef applies, and of course, there's obviously going to be debates or they're gonna be campaigning, they're gonna see that the person's not qualified anyways, they would do it for somebody else. But that's preventing them from even trying.
Right, but again, still, a equivalent combination of education and experience is usually used when you say, this individual have a degree in this and 5 years of experience, whatever, or 10 years or whatever. So if you don't define the education or the experience, then why have an equivalent to it?
So although, I do know chefs.
So I'm not trying to.
And actually, another community where I was helping do the recruitment, a chef applied. As a site. The more likely scenario though is going to be an engineer. There's a lot of engineers in this world that were city managers in the United States. So I mean, that's something that you're going to see, but they're not a public administration, they don't have a public administration degree or a government degree, which the first time I was here, was trying to understand what that was, still don't know how to understand what that is. But, so, I mean, there are, a finance director, someone that's been a finance director for 15 years, probably doesn't have a public administration degree or a master's, but, has a BA in mathematics or accounting or whatever it is, right? And again, someone that would be qualified to be a manager of a community the size of Enfield.
But you still have enough leeway there because a closely related field or any equivalent combination of education and experience. And I think that gives enough leeway. I don't know why they made it may instead of shall, but I think shall.
When you get into the time as a council member and say Matt left and, and obviously there was an interim.
You're really drilling on that.
I'm just helping you. Having more flexibility is better for the council members to navigate. And so I've always been in favor of the word may over shall, only because of the fact I know when you get a group together and you're interviewing and you get this one person and it doesn't fit certain criteria, maybe it is a mathematic, somebody says, well, that's not here under the or the experience and stuff, they were mathematic. But the guy may gives them the ability with a powerful interview to say, that's our person, that's him or her that we want. And so I'm just going on their side of it. Having may probably gives them a little more leeway to find the best person. So I'll leave it out there.
Just on a sidebar, my business.
And I understand what you're saying as far as you don't need the other language. I'm just saying,
Not at all. I mean, you could stop after accredited college or university if you have May, because it doesn't matter after that.
right.
So why have all the rest of it if you have May?
Right.
Just stop after the word university and be done with it.
See, and I don't think on the town, I'm sorry.
I found one of my best therapists for my business at a yard sale. I was buying some stuff for my autism center, and I was like, oh, I wonder if this toy would be good for the autism center. And all of a sudden I hear, autism center? You have an autism center? And she's been working for me for less than a year, but she's like she's my second right-hand woman. And she had zero experience, but I trained her and I worked with her, and she's amazing. So I don't think that having the language, I understand language. I'm just saying I think we're denying opportunities to potential people like Mr. Copper said, it could be an engineer. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a chef.
This doesn't limit them from
Okay.
applying. This just guides the town council to say, there's gotta be some connection. You can't just walk off the street and manage a town.
Right.
I have experience running businesses.
Right.
I don't know enough to manage towns. I can run a business,
Mhm.
but I don't have that experience. Would I apply? I don't know. But I personally don't feel I know enough to run a town. The public administration side is so very different than anything else. And I think that's addressed in
Okay.
here.
And I'll tell you, just, whatever, regardless of what it says here, there's gonna be people that have no,
Right, no business.
no, I don't even say that, no background, in public administration or government, and they're going to apply. I mean, because that's what you get when you put out there that, we're looking to hire someone. You get chefs.
Okay. I'm good.
As subsection A, keep as written, modify, I'm gonna just show hands for keep as written, just with one correction that she'll have to make in terms of the shall reside in town, has to just agree with the previous words, but show
Right,
hands.
yes.
Keep as written with that one modification at this point.
The modification would be shall for may.
The modification, no, is shall reside in said town. It's the third sentence from the bottom of that paragraph.
Yeah, what about changing at the top? I thought we were talking about changing the word.
Yeah, well, right, I'm asking, do we keep it as written with this one correction that needs to agree with the verbiage
Right.
and keeping it as may right now instead of shall?
Yeah.
Just show of hands.
Oh. I got no problem with the second part.
Okay,
The residency part.
okay, well, let me rephrase that.
Right.
So keep the residency, correcting the residency part,
Right.
changing the may back to shall. Show of hands to keep that or to do that.
I just need a minute.
Yeah.
You want to just break them out, 2 sections? I mean,
What's that?
2 votes, so to speak. Get rid of the town requirement.
No, we already, I think we all agreed on that, one, right?
Yeah,
We all
okay,
agreed on
we agreed on that.
fixing the town requirement.
Okay.
It's
So
just
now the
the
question is
top shall may.
change may to shall. Right?
Right.
That's the question.
Yep.
And you're asking which way? If I,
You wanted to read it one more time?
yeah, I got
I'll
it.
ask again.
Yeah, and now the question is.
So the proposal is to change the may back to shall, by show of hands to support that.
But you're not changing it, you're keeping shall, because that's the original.
I'm going based on the red line adjustments.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so shall instead of may. Show of hands to do that.
2, 3.
And abstain on this. So against?
For.
No, shit. Oh, against. I thought,
Yeah.
I thought he
So,
said
this is
again.
against.
I thought he said again.
This is against. Sorry.
And against was
You're against.
Kate, Greg, and Tom.
And there's 2 abstentions, is that what it is?
I abstained.
I abstained.
Oh,
And
you voted yes?
then everyone else was yes.
You voted for
The
it.
second time.
So four
So you-
yes.
Yeah, so you voted May. So there's 4 mays?
Four
I said
minutes.
keep it as May.
Yeah, and there's 3 shells, is that right?
That's, and one abstention, correct.
Section B, anything, or I should say paragraph B,
So that,
So that stays as May.
stays as the edited version that stays as May.
Oh, I think I also misunderstood that.
Do we want to revote on that one?
So we were voting to keep it as May. That,
Second vote.
So let's just
let's start again.
start again.
No,
So-
no, we voted to, we voted to change it to shall, back to shall. And we had,
3 for,
yes,
4 against, and 1 abstain.
right.
okay.
And
I
then
think
you
we should
voted,
revote.
But I think, okay, I think there's 2 parts we're voting on.
no, we're just doing the top one.
Oh, just the one that I was.
That was already voted on.
So the shall is actually.
So the original verb, okay, so the original verbiage that was crossed out is the word shall. Who wants to put that back in instead of may? So we're going back to shall have been.
And you said you thought May would be easier.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think I misunderstood.
So those in favor of using the word shall instead of may, raise your hands. Down to 2. It's like jury vote. And those against, which would mean you want to keep the word may in there as redlined. Okay,
Everyone else except you.
yeah, I'm gonna keep my abstention on.
Yeah, I
Okay.
misunderstood that.
We good now?
We're good. We're good.
See, this is the getting late part. Paragraph B.
Are we thinking, I've got, my ride has been waiting. Can I just text my ride if we're gonna be
Yeah.
a little bit longer?
I mean, are we finishing?
Yeah, if we could, I want to just finish this chapter, so maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay. I can listen, just text me.
Paragraph B, any changes there? None were proposed by anyone.
Did we ever vote on the candidates who are residents of the town are strongly preferred part?
We voted to keep it as was previously added.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep.
If I could on section 2, that 90-day, I know there's at least one
We're on
time.
section 2 yet.
No, we're on
Paragraph B.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is why you end at 8:30.
Yeah, I told you, sorry. Paragraph B, any changes, updates, suggestions? Noted. Section 2, man, 90 days.
Yeah, so the issue with that is that council can only appoint one person for a 90-day period. And there are times when it takes more than 90 days to get someone as a permanent replacement. And so when they do this, they can renew it. So the first time that I was appointed, it took a long time to get the ad out. And then they got into the actual selection, and they appointed me, I think, in the second tenure of the
90 days.
Yeah, in the second 90 days.
Mhm.
And so they ended up having to appoint someone else for a period of 2 or 3 weeks.
We had to leave for a while.
But that was after I left. I'm saying before I was appointed, Chris Bromson was the acting.
Right.
But they didn't get around to the interviews and actually appointing me until the next 90 days started. Because, in this, it takes 45 to 60 days to get the ad.
So what if we hear what Matt's saying, what if we said that the town council can extend it for another 30 days with 2/3 vote? And that would give a total of 150 days to finalize.
Yeah. I want to give councils that
A little
ability.
bit, another option to just extend that.
Yeah, because,
I don't think they should have another 90 days.
No,
I think
no.
the pressure's gotta be on them, but
yeah, the other part I didn't get to say, I was gonna say is, you don't want to leave it open-ended because it becomes easier to delay.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. You want council to appoint a manager.
Right.
So my
But
suggestion
this
is
is
just,
already at 180 days, written, right? And you're gonna add another,
the town council can extend an additional 30 days with 2/3 vote.
So 90, 90, and then another 30.
Yeah, and that's their cap. It's 9 months. Any other thoughts, suggestions, pushback on that? Show it, so
7 months. Yeah, 7.
7 months. Again,
So
flat
that-
rate 30.
At that point, it would just be if they couldn't, we would just have no town manager at that point. if
It'd be
they-
an interim.
It'd be an interim.
Okay.
I mean, it's typically, because, contracts now for a manager to get out, it's sometimes up to 90 days.
Yeah.
So again, if you think about that appointment process, if they're not active in the first 3 months, then they're doing everything in the next 3 months. And then the manager has to give notice, because, manager's not gonna give notice until he has a contract. And getting a contract sometimes can take a month. And so you just give them the ability to not have to find someone else.
Show of hands on that.
Can you change the first time period from 90 to 120 days? And just eliminate the rest of the crap? Because that's what it adds up to anyway.
I think, keeping pressure on councils.
Yeah, I think 90.
Yeah, because then you guys you have to agree, like, hey, are we actually doing something at this point, like for the final 30, like?
And most times, the issue is going to be, it's probably 9 times out of 10, it's not gonna be an issue. But if you have a council that is slow in the beginning and doesn't get that ad out and the process started in the beginning, then you run into the issues.
The other issue you run into too, you could have a pool of candidates, interview them all and say, nope, none of them, put it back out again.
Yeah.
So that happens.
That happened here.
That help?
Yeah, it does.
Show of hands for the modification as discussed. Okay. And the next page has another paragraph. The only suggestion I had on there was, middle of paragraph, it starts, it's discussion, but without the right to vote. Next part, shall prepare and cause to be printed as soon as possible after the close of the fiscal year. My view is, I just thought of, well, why not say within 30 days? And that's for the reports, right? But is that not enough time?
Has it ever been done?
it hasn't been done since 2007.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still as soon as possible. So I'm gonna reiterate my within 30 days.
So where are we looking at right now?
I'm not quite sure where you're.
It's middle of paragraph.
It starts with what?
It's discussion, but without a right to vote.
All right.
It really starts off, shall prepare and cause to be printed. It says as soon as possible. And my suggestion was put a time limit on there. 5th line down.
Towards the right.
So an annual town report hasn't been done in a while, though.
Since 2007. That's my recollection. It was cut out of the budget.
It was cut out because of the expense. It used to be a published,
Exactly.
like magazine almost.
So is
So do
that,
we just,
is that town
line for that?
report even?
Does it have to be like public?
Is
Could it
it
just be online?
I mean, the way that it's written here. How it's written.
It said here said to be printed. Could we change it so it could just be an online thing, so we don't have to worry about as much of an expenditure of printing it?
Online available at the clerk's office type of thing.
That way we.
Is it an important report? Whatever it was back then.
The importance of it was a calendar. That was the big.
it was a calendar and it had, it was,
Everybody expected that the year. before.
sometimes good for historical research.
It has who was elected and the departments. It has a little bit of information. I mean, I think the the real value is, or the real value could be the accounting of the money that was spent, you know. But you don't really get that until you get to the audit.
Mhm.
And those used to be called popular annual financial reports. And basically what it was a reduction of everything that's in a financial report to 1 or 2 pages that people can understand,
Mhm.
right? And you could put, you know, what is going on, you know, what were the goals, what did they achieve, and what to look for. So is there value in it? Yes, there is value in it. I think any more,
Nobody's asked for it since 2007.
I think a lot of the information that is in it is obtainable elsewhere.
yeah,
Such as the elected officials. I have an election book every time, you know, I can go back forever and say who was elected.
So then the question
Having said
for
that,
this
it's a
group
nice
is,
report.
do we cross it out or do we, I mean, as soon as possible, it gives them the flexibility not to do it, of course. Or do we put a timeline on it?
Oh, I guess I'm leaning on how the town employees think about it.
I'm not the one writing the report.
I mean, I'm always in favor of having a historical record of thing, but if it's really not needed, because in other forms, it's gonna cause, you know, time wastage.
Has anybody missed it? Like, I was sad that it's not there.
you know, the first year when people didn't get it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
First year.
outcry, but then everyone found out what it costs to do it, and it's like, oh, okay, not a problem. And again, you know, normally the website is that
Yeah, so
information.
So do we keep that in at all? Do we cross that out?
let's cross it out.
The shall prepare all the way through annual town report.
I think we can just leave it, so if at any point in the future, if a town manager or a town council wanted to, they can. Cause as it is right now, the town can choose not to. But if, say in the future, we wanted to, it leaves them the leeway of, you know.
And you
choosing to do
change the
so.
word shall to may.
Second.
Do you want how quick we just solve that problem?
I like that idea.
Make a motion.
All right, thoughts?
Fine
And
with me.
even the printed, I would change the word printed. I would just say prepared.
Prepare.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's,
Take out and cause to be printed.
yeah, prepare, good, as soon as possible. Anything to save money.
And
So-
may or shall?
So May.
It's fair, Gary.
Wait,
Best
no.
statement.
May prepare.
Are we gonna keep as soon as possible?
I think, given the lack of interest in doing it,
Okay.
As soon as possible is acceptable.
in all seriousness, shall or may?
I like may.
I like May.
May,
May, I think it helps, like.
May.
Because this is a 10-year,
Gary, you're the shall guy.
yeah, I go with may. This is a 10-year document, so therefore, for the next 10 years, I mean, we already saw a lot of print stuff going away. I mean, you know, major companies are avoiding all of that. It's all electronic, so I'm thinking 10 years may work better.
Okay, so the change is may prepare, cross out and cause to be printed as soon as possible after the blah, 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 and everything else stays the same.
Mm-hmm,
And then they have the one edit there.
mm-hmm.
Okay, show of hands for that change. Okay, last section for this chapter, appointments. One question I had on here, third line from the bottom. In case the town treasurer is absent or unable to act, the manager may countersign checks in accordance. Is there someone else besides the town manager that should be signing those, like the director of finance?
Well, that's, they intentionally keep the finance director out of that.
Okay, no, that's true. Yep.
She
He, man, they
would
man.
actually be doing like the approval
Yep.
of the purchase orders and everything, so you want to keep it separate.
But is there someone besides you that should be doing that? Is the town manager the right person to countersign the treasurer's?
I think the town manager is the
Who's our
appropriate.
town treasurer?
It's,
Heather.
Heather, yeah.
Heatherin?
Okay.
I didn't know we had one.
Okay, I was just curious about that,
It's
you know,
usually
from an
what
audit
is the
perspective.
deputy finance director position.
Okay. Okay. Any suggested changes there?
To answer your question, other places, you could have an elected official, where that in, Florida, the person after the town manager, so it was the clerk, the town manager, and then the mayor. So it's one of those. You could do an elected official, but the problem with elected official is that everything is electronically.
That changes.
And if that changes, there is an expense to going through that process to get the signatures.
I would leave it.
Leave it as is.
Out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If no one's opposed.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
There we go. Thank you very much. We're on chapter 5 next time.
It was gonna be on the 6th. Keep going with momentum.